Welcome to the Hardy Brothers Podcast, where we talk about the paranormal, earth mysteries, and so much more. Tonight's episode will be discussing the haunting of Black's Landing, located on Tippecanoe Lake in Leesburg, Indiana. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the Hardy Brothers Podcast.
This is the Hardy Brothers Podcast. It's Friday night, January 7th, 2022, and we're going to talk about the haunting of Black's Landing in Leesburg, Indiana. What do you got to say about that, Hardy?
Well, sounds like an interesting topic, especially considering that we lived it, and in my case, I still live there, so still experiencing some things.
Well, we're going to get to that. Why don't we take them back to, when did we move there, 1978?
Yeah.
So I was 3 years old, you would have been 6, and we moved to Black's Landing. Of course, we weren't too far away from there, and had a nice little house. It was had a great view of the lake, Lake Tippecanoe, and a lot of our family lived there. Our grandparents, our paternal grandparents, and then our grandmother's brothers and sisters all lived at Black's Landing. That was our grandma's name. Her name was Rosie Black, and her brothers and sisters were all Blacks. And I believe, Dee, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was settled in 1856?
James Benjamin Black came over from Strasburg, Ohio.
Yeah.
And he got together with Melissa Mock, and her father, the Mock family, sold him the original 20-acre tract of land in 1878.
Oh, 1878.
Yeah, 78. So it's been in the family since 1878.
Wow. So Grandma, and then she had 3 brothers and 2 sisters, so there were 6 siblings. And they grew up there, and this is where Keith and I, with our parents, moved there in 1978.
Yeah, Grandma's brother, Orley Black, built the house that we rented from 1978 to, I think, 1980.
81.
Or 81.
I was in kindergarten. Yeah. I was in kindergarten. We were still in that house.
Yeah, so I would have, well... Yeah, maybe. Yeah, because we lived in Hoy's Landing too, which wasn't too far away. But
remember, we used to walk up the hill. When you walked up the hill, there's Grandma's house, there's Aunt Shirley's house, Uncle Orley's house, and then Aunt Sally, Uncle Ben's house. Uncle Ben was our grandmother's brother, youngest brother, and our cousins. So it's a family land with a lot of family that lived there for many, many years. So we were really close to our cousins. And so we would walk up, when Keith was in school and I started kindergarten, we'd walk up the hill in the morning and get on the bus at Uncle Ben's house. But now, let's get to what the topic is, the haunting of Black's Landing.
Sure.
Now, I was about 4 years, I remember being 4, and I would walk up that hill with you, and then I'd go back home. Now, this is, 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not ideal for a 4-year-old to be walking about. But I did darn near every day. Mm-hmm. And you'd get on the bus, and I'd go home, and the trick was not to wake Dad. Mm-hmm. Okay? So if Dad was in his bedroom sleeping, I didn't want to wake him. So I'd close. You and I shared a bedroom. I'd close the door and turn the light on and play with all my Disney toys. We, of course, were young kids. We had a lot of toys. And what would happen is there'd be a loud knock on the door, on our bedroom door. 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. And it would kind of startle me. And I'd be like, shh, don't wake Dad. Whoever was knocking, I was telling them, don't wake my dad. I didn't want to get spanked, or at least yelled at or whatever, And I would open the door to make sure that Dad didn't didn't wake up. And sometimes I'd open that door and it'd just be like wind. I don't want to say like a gush of wind, like blew my hair back.
No,
It
but
wasn't like that,
there
but
was
you could feel energy.
an energy, yeah.
There was energy there. Now here's the thing. I was pretty hyperactive. I had a very I don't want to say wild imagination, but I had a very, real imagination. And I had imaginary friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd name them. You might remember, you might not. But I would name them and whatnot. Well, when you're 4 years old, your imaginary friends are kind of real when they're knocking on the door. So
right.
I'm thinking, my imaginary friends aren't so imaginary, they're real. So I'd be like, hey, Frank, Headless Horseman, after whatever names I made up. These were real names, too, by the way. Skeleton was one of them, Headless Horseman. I called him Headless, and Frank. And, excuse me. And I would say, be quiet, don't wake Dad. I really had a fear of getting spanked, I guess. And then I'd close the door and I'd go back and get on the bed or on the floor and start playing with my toys again. And knock, knock, knock. 3 knocks, louder than hell. And I'd be like, oh, geez, shh, I don't recall hearing voices. I do recall some energy. And one time when I opened the door, it looked like a bunch of, but there's a hallway. Deed, you might remember, our room was at the end of a hallway, and then if you walk down the hallway, if you turned right, the bathroom was there. If you turned left, you would go out into the living room area.
Yeah.
And if you kept going straight, you would run into Mom and Dad's bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, it was a 3-bedroom house.
Yeah.
Maybe 4 if you count that upstairs. But so I opened the door one time, and I could see shadows like clinging to the wall. I mean, it was like something you'd see in a movie. It was creepy.
Yeah.
I wasn't creeped out by it, because I didn't know about stuff like that.
Yeah, I was
I'm
gonna
4
say,
years old.
At that age.
But I saw it, and I have to admit that it was bizarre. But at the end of the hall, the shadow, it looked like a Native American was standing at the end of the hall, right in front of Mom and Dad's bedroom. He had his arms, like his fists were on his hips.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I say it was a Native American, Keith, was because I could see his headdress. It looked like he had a chief's headdress on with feathers and whatnot. And it disappeared within just a couple seconds, but I was like, oh, wow. And so I closed the door, and I thought, wow, was that one of my friends? I didn't. It had an aggressive stance when your hands are on your hips. That's what it looked like. But but it wasn't like looking at me in particular. But it didn't seem. I don't want to say it was sinister, but it was dark. It was black. It was a black shadow, and I saw it.
Well, some of the native tribes in the area, I mean, Lake Wawasee, we had Chief Wawasee, right? Tippecanoe, Musquebuck, I think is the most prevalent one, kind of on 300 East there towards Milford.
Yeah.
Our great-grandpa, Grandma Rosie's dad, Ed Black, had that arrowhead collection.
What a
8,000
collection
pieces.
it was. 8,000 pieces.
The Smithsonian actually contacted him and offered him money for that. He, bound them and put them on plaques or whatever and mounted some on the wall. And every...
we had a lot of plaques. Didn't everybody's house have a plaque?
Yeah, everybody got one when he passed. They got... some people got 2 or 3. Well, yeah, more than one. Cause
I remember Uncle Ben had a few. Didn't he have a few?
Oh, yeah, all of them.
All
Ben,
of 'em, yeah.
Ben, Doug, Grandma,
They all
Orly,
did.
and Donna.
And everybody, this was an impressive collection. We're talking about arrowheads, tomahawks.
Well, tools that they used to whatever that
Whatever.
smash the bread or the
Yeah.
grain and working tools, and then of course arrowheads beyond your imagination and in perfect mint condition.
Oh yeah, it was the collection's cool. Maybe I bet
No,
I
I have 2, 3 uh, um, mounts,
mounts. Yeah.
and Uncle Pat, he has them because that's what he likes.
Yeah.
But I'll get him. I get him back. So,
The-
but the third one is actually still in the attic.
Yeah.
And belongs to Uncle Dave, and he's got a whole box of stuff, and it's in the attic. He just I don't think he wants it or whatever. But anyway, it's in there with a bunch of pictures and some stuff that was in the house when Grandma was there.
This is the by the way, this is. I hope Pat listens to these because this is the second time we've mentioned our Uncle Pat from Ohio in the podcast. Well-
You mentioned shadow people. I would just like to chime in since we're talking about 1978, 79.
Yeah.
Now, I woke up one night and our beds were perpendicular. My feet were aimed towards basically your head. I think your bed came across to, perpendicular to mine, and I was something woke me up, and I looked over, and there were, I don't know, I'll call them shadow people. Looked like they were messing around with you. We're doing something over in your area. And one of them looked up and they saw that I had seen them, and they went back into we had a closet there in the room. The door was open, the light was on, and they went in and went up, kind of creepy, crawled up the wall. And the last one looked at me, closed the door, and turned the light out. Boom. And, that shit stays with you for a long time.
Yeah.
And I saw an episode where the one on Discovery or History or whatever, TLC, the one gal, she's like a medium or something, and then the detective is an officer, and they go and check out these houses, and he does all the paperwork for like an old crime, and then she comes through and kind of does a reading of the house. I don't remember the name of the show, but they actually did one in our area at the Barbie Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the show?
The Dead Files.
Dead Files, thank you. And she had mentioned one time that the shadow people really scare her because she didn't understand them. Everything else she kind of had a grasp of, and she could tell if something was real evil or not or whatever. Some of it's residual, some of it's friendly Caspers, or other is darker than that. But she had mentioned the shadow people, and I'm like, I've experienced that. You've experienced it, and my son has experienced it. And we'll get into his experiences later because we're talking about yours and mine right now back in that house. But
so what I saw when I opened the door a couple times, and it wasn't the only time I saw it. I saw it a few times. The shadows. It must have been what you saw in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Now let me
I
ask
would
you
say
something.
yeah, but I didn't see an Indian per se, but maybe. It's 1979. It's 2022. That's a long time ago.
That could have been my overactive imagination, also.
But
the
I don't think
reason
so. I
you-
don't think so.
We
but it
we
could
had
have been.
mentioned all the arrowheads and the tools and things that that our relatives and ancestors have found right there around the area. Well, as you recall, Deed, you may recall the yard in back. There was a hill. There were mounds, and it wasn't an even hill. It was moundish.
They were more mound-like. Yeah,
And it was right in the backyard of this house, folks.
with the round stones and it wasn't like grass. It was
So
actual
you-
mounds and it was interesting.
You and I have always come to the conclusion that more than likely that might have been an Indian, well, I shouldn't say that, but a Native American burial.
Well,
ground.
yeah.
That might explain.
That could be
what
some
I
of
saw.
the experiences. Yeah.
Now, this is also a lot of my
Or
experiences.
could explain some of the experiences. Yeah.
A lot of my experiences in that house happened in the wee hours of the morning.
Mm-hmm.
and when nobody was around,
Yeah.
mom was at work and dad was sleeping, and you were gone. And then also, I'll just give a list of the things that happened to me while we were in that house.
Mm-hmm.
Echoes of families' voices. I would hear, back then, everybody, if we were playing with cousins and let's say we were down by the lake, you would hear someone's mother yell, kids, it's time to come home. Keithy, Scotty, or Debbie. And that happened all the time because you didn't have intercoms or phones, right? So everybody's just yelling across Black's Landing. And so then you knew, okay, well, I got to get going. And so at night, sometimes we'd just be hanging out, whether it's in the kitchen or the living room, wherever it was. Remember our toy room? We had that awesome toy room there.
Right. Yep.
All of a sudden, I'd hear, Aunt Sally or Cousin Sandy or Grandma. I'd hear their voices just ring out in that house like they were right there yelling for one of the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, playtime's over. Debbie went home a long time ago. Donald's been gone. These are cousins of ours, folks. And, it's like Aunt Sally is not outside the door yelling because that's how loud it was. I'd hear him just like an echo throughout the house. And I'd say, Dad, do you hear that? I'd ask Dad, do you hear that? Oh, I didn't hear anything. And someone's out there going, Scotty. Folks, I'm sorry if this scares the hell out of you, but this is what I went through. And the older I got, it creeped me out.
Well, as a kid,
I didn't
you try
know
to
about
figure out what the hell
what
it is, and you're like,
it sounded like
well,
Grandma.
Yeah, you just think,
was outside yelling at one of us. You know.
Yeah, there was a lot of strange activities in that house. Now, I did find later on a Ouija board in the attic, and I think
you found that.
Yeah, I think somebody did. I mean,
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure Dad would have.
Well, there was a loft, and then there was a little door that went into an attic.
Yes,
off
right.
of the loft, and it was actually in there in the attic area,
Remember,
not,
Dad
not
used
in the
to
loft.
hang out.
Yeah,
Dad used to hang out in the loft.
Yeah, he had like I don't know, his guitar and whatever up there.
But I remember hearing about. I didn't know a Ouija. I couldn't pronounce it when I was 4 or 5, but I remember hearing Dad was not happy about it. I'm sure if he would have came across it, it would have gotten disposed of.
Just he was part of a Glory Barn was what it was called back in the 70s, and it was kind of a faith healing type religion,
End time,
yeah, fire and brimstone type stuff, and it was all good and well, but I think sometimes when you get really into something, especially religion, I think you can bring things upon yourself or draw energies to you or to your family or to a home or to an area, because you really, none of us understand the spirit world, or and you start playing around with, you're reading scripture, you think you know something, so you say an incantation or whatever and bring something on, you don't know what it is.
See the bathroom light on in the hallway. I'm like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, right.
And I'd go get her, and of course I annoyed her, or not that I annoyed her, but she's trying
getting
to get
ready
ready
for work, and you should be asleep.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So she's like, well,
irritated.
Go back to bed.
Right,
yeah.
go back, yeah.
And believe me, I completely understand. So I'd go back to bed, Keith. I'd leave the light on, and as soon as I'd start falling asleep, then I could hear them, and they'd be saying, "Oh, you're going to leave the light on? You think that's going to stop it?"
Oh, I remember you told me that one time.
Yeah, we were just little, Keith. We were little kids, and I could physically hear them say, "Oh yeah, we're going to get you as soon as she leaves."
I remember talking voices and stuff, but I don't remember specific words or anything like as clear as you do. I remember just seeing some stuff, but I do remember hearing things, just don't remember what was said. And just to move forward a little bit, my son, who God bless him, is a United States Marine now, and just a few years ago, experienced Native American activity in the basement of the home we live in now, which is just up the hill from the home that you and I are talking about.
Right.
Okay, and so he went out in the woods out back, and I had told him to be careful of a certain area because I thought it was Native American grounds. I know that one of the owners back there let actual Native Americans back in there to do, they would do chants and dances and stuff, and this was fairly recent, within the last 5 to 10 years. And so I said, just avoid that area. Well, he didn't. He went right through there, and first thing he did was him and a friend, this is 2 eyewitnesses, they were going frog gigging back at the boat company, and he shined his light up in a tree because they heard something, and there was an Indian sitting in the tree looking at him. Of course, Ethan is, he's not easily scarable. He's a tough kid. He's,
Oh, yeah.
strong mind and physical. And so, but later on, when he was at home alone, sleeping in the basement, before he didn't sleep in his room forever. Something bothered him in there, so he'd sleep out
On the couch?
on the couch. Actually, we had that, at the time, we had that day bed next to the fireplace. And he woke up, and a Native American had a knife and was going to jump on him, and he put his arms up, to shield it, like really block it. Freaked him out. Then he saw kind of a shadow like the Hat Man or something similar, and I thought it might have been Ed Black, just there trying to figure out who Ethan was. But he said it just drifted into the love seat that was beside him and then faded away. And then another experience he had with Native American was an Indian pointing at Dad's boat down at the pier. Ethan looked out, and there was Indian pointing. And I think maybe...
You don't want to ride in that boat.
Well, I think you can now. I got it all fixed. But I think maybe the Indian was telling him, next time you go back frog gigging, take the boat and don't cut through our woods. I think that's what that meant.
Do you
Seriously, because nothing happened of it. He said, I looked out the window. Something drew me to the window, and there was a shadow, kind of an Indian-looking shadow, pointing at the boat.
Do you think the Indian in the tree was the same one?
I never asked him that.
It could be.
I could ask him. And then, he did see the shadow people coming up the upstairs to the wall. And then right after he saw that, I was having a really intense dream, one of those lucid things, and was freaked out. And I couldn't wake myself up. An angel woke me up because I was, moving around, kind of hollering or trying to holler in my dream. You know how you sort of make that real weird noise because you're completely out of it. And so there was a little activity recently. That was a couple years ago. And so that stuff could be residual, could be something. In this case, I don't think it is, but it's something that definitely remembered me. And then, messing with Ethan and.
What if it remembered
It's all
you?
gone now.
That'd be wild.
I know, but it's all gone now, and I think a lot of it is. I listened to someone talking about this type of energy, and they said, once you accept it and kind of include it as just something that's there, and it's part of the situation. Usually, you stop having difficult time with it. And so I don't know if that's it or, but this stuff is fascinating, and what you and I experienced and my son has experienced and I have experienced, separate from you in the same area is what's really intriguing. So is it something attached to the land? Is it the houses itself? Is just the location? We are near water, so that's something that people say draws that energy. Water and
there's a lot of our family who has lived there over the last 100 years, Has anybody else experienced anything? I never hear much. Mom and Dad don't talk about the house much at all.
No.
You know, yeah.
Well, okay, yes. Paul and Karen Hacker live right next door to me at Black's Landing. And
Our great Aunt Donna's old
Aunt
house.
Donna's old house, which was Grandma's sister. And Karen, my mother-in-law, when she first moved in after we bought the house, she experienced some Native American stuff. It kind of bothered her a little bit, but she's in 70, and so she's like, okay. And then here recently, she's had felt an energy touch her back. She turned around because she thought it was maybe me or Angel that came in the house, and it wasn't anything. It was something very soft and very loving. So I assume that it's Aunt Donna saying, "Hey, Karen, hi," or "Hey, it's okay," or
It
something,
could be.
Yeah, something like that. So to answer your question, yes, Paul and Karen have experienced stuff right next door.
So we do know people that are experiencing some paranormal activity there.
Yeah,
Okay.
other than ourselves and my son, and
Ah.
yeah, so it's interesting. And Elizabeth, my oldest daughter, has captured orbs on her phone while videoing the cats in the house. More than once, multiple times. And I think in the beginning that was probably orbs of Grandma and Grandpa Bill and Rosie.
Could be.
Because the one time was in her room on her bed, and her bed at that time was right where their bed used to be.
You know.
And both orbs came right into a pillow on each side of it.
Oh my! Why don't we should?
And the cat tipped her off to it, but she didn't know it until after she watched the video.
Watch the video. So maybe we should get some equipment over there, our phones or some EVP, some audio equipment, and maybe set it up over there in your house and see if we can't capture something.
Yeah, we could. I mean, I don't want to draw anything out
good point.
that's unwelcome, but
like whoever you're talking to said, when you accept it and
yeah, all that negative stuff
seems to be going good for you now, to where you're not having experiences.
Right.
Which, in my,
hey, I'll be honest with you.
That's okay with
in
me.
In one way, it makes for good stories. I tell some friends at work, and they're like, "Dude, that's crazy." And then tonight, right after work, I told a guy we're going to do a podcast. Me and my brother. It's going to be about growing up at Black's Landing, paranormal experiences. And he told me about, we used to live in this farmhouse, man, and I used to get the the tingly feeling, and it was freaky to go out to the barn at certain times of day or night. And
sometimes
so,
I wonder.
It's fun to just tell stories about it when you've experienced it, but sometimes it's not a pleasant experience when it's happening. But afterwards, when you can kind of say, okay, everything's fine, but that was weird.
Of all those experiences I had, when I started kindergarten, a lot of that changed. My dreams changed, which was really cool. Which, by the way, I know a lot about dreams. I've read, dozens of books on dreams. When I was young, starting, in kindergarten, first grade, I started reading about dreams. I actually learned how to lucid dream. It really helped with I really don't have nightmares or bad dreams. I haven't for years upon years upon years. And living there was a great experience, not just the house, but just being at Black's Landing, being close to Grandma and Grandpa and our cousins up the hill.
Yeah.
In our great aunts and uncles and our cousins. It was we were right on the lake, beautiful Lake Tippecanoe there, and it's a great experience.
One more quick story, an experience Elizabeth had. She had her senior year in high school. She had a poor track meet and didn't do well in the high jump, and it was cold and nasty out, and just a horrible. She was just struggling with it. But that was it. End of the season, end of the year. She's gearing up to go to IU, but she was struggling with just that, ending her senior year on a rough note, and our cousin Nate, who passed away early, he's very young. He came to her in a dream and told her it was okay. And she has only met him once or twice when they were up with his brothers and sisters
Wow.
visiting my other neighbor, Aunt Dee. And so our cousin who passed on, he was cremated and buried next to his grandpa right there in North Webster Cemetery. And he came to visit my daughter and Elizabeth and said that everything is you're going to be fine. And after that, she was great. And
Well,
Nate was always like that, though. He was,
oh, good kid.
yeah, you're going to be fine. You can do good. He's always positive, upbeat, even when he got cancer. And he knew it was the worst kind and that there was no way to beat it. He made it 8 years with something that he was only supposed to last a year.
Maybe Black's Landing is that kind of place that energy, maybe, flocks, just surrounds Black's Landing.
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know where it lands. Like a lot of things, some people, the latitude, longitude lines, ley lines, and things like that. Some people, I don't know, what is it, 33 degree? It just
The 33rd degree
parallel
parallel.
where it seems like a lot of energy or things happen, particularly in that area or on that parallel. I'm not sure where we are in that.
I'll look it up. Maybe I'll
But
edit it on the
maybe
video.
it's in one of those areas where there just draws energy, or again because it's by a body of water. Maybe there's
Yeah, could be. Yep,
something to
could
do with
be.
that, with the currents and the water's always moving. And
Well, one thing's for sure, it's a beautiful place. And it's one of
Yes.
it's what we call home. I've had 3 homes in my life, and Black's Landing is one of those 3 homes.
yeah,
Well, everybody, we're at the end of this podcast talking about some paranormal activities that we experienced at Black's Landing on Tippecanoe Lake in Leesburg, Indiana. We appreciate you tuning in. I'm Scott Hardy, along with my brother,
Keith Hardy.
and we'll see you on the next Hardy Bros podcast. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you.
Good night.